is that suddenly Jesus Christ took what everyone believed would be an eternal law and upended it. It's something that actually we have to remember that occurred within the life of the Prophet Muhammad when he changed the Qibla, or where the rituals, sacraments, and teachings, both of the Jewish and the Christian faith, suddenly were gone. And a new way of relating to the divine was actually brought forth by the Prophet Muhammad. And that, without least question, these individuals pronounced those manifestations of God, those revealers of the divine law, as infidel and sentenced them to death. To summarize this first in a series of studies of the concept of the seal of the prophets and finality in Islam, we first looked at a series of quotes. Those series of quotes were statements by Baha'u'llah that actually confirm that the Prophet Muhammad was the seal of the prophets, and that he was the last prophet, in fact, prior to the great day of God. I stated that in order to investigate this topic, we have to be seekers after the beloved, and that may encompass or include the putting aside of historical interpretations and understandings of our communities, and try to just look at the revelation of the Quran and revelations in general with fresh eyes. That while we may have the Hadith and the interpretations of the Islamic community over time, I cannot make that, at least in the initial stages of our investigation, that important. We then looked at the root words, of the roots, if you will, of this quote about the seal of the prophets. We looked at the sealer, so to be sealed, having been sealed, and sealed. And what did we find out? I believe it's very clear, if we're actually just to look at the Quran itself, to look at the Arabic roots and use the Quran as its own definition, as its own explainer of what it means, that seals are things that are put on, and they do close. Yet there is no reason to actually state that those seals cannot be taken off by God, and that certain kinds of seals like the seal that is placed upon the wine, that the righteous in the end of time, in the day of God actually, will be able to remove a seal and drink of this pure wine. I then looked at a long quote, which I had to break up, from Baha'u'llah, from the Book of Certitude, regarding what I would call this great drumbeat of the Quran. And that drumbeat is that the Quran, out of any of the books I know, has this sort of rhythm that moves through it. And that rhythm is that we consistently have messengers of God, out of the love of God, sent unto humankind throughout all these communities. And these messengers of God, as we'll see in the future, regularly will change aspects of the religion, but also will not always appear according to what we have already assumed they should. That our interpretations often run afoul, and that we then persecute these individuals and then sometimes kill them. What Baha'u'llah says in this series is that we have to be very careful. If we look, he said, consider Moses, consider Jesus, consider the Prophet Muhammad, and it seems like we're hearing the same drumbeat thumping across the landscape. Be careful, for try to separate in your minds the sovereignty and grandeur, for example, that you see in the person of the Prophet Muhammad and his domination of human history for, like a millennia and a half, from what actually happened and why these individuals rejected the Prophet Muhammad in his day. Why is it that the Jewish divines rejected Jesus Christ? Why did the Egyptians and even his own people actually reject Moses? And try to learn from these stories and be careful. Because many of these individuals were praying for the advent of the Messiah. We're waiting for the coming of a divine messenger.